Following me? We on the same page here? So as I started lifting up my labeling of right or wrong, I would just simply say, it is what it is. And it drove my husband insane because he hates that saying, let alone the fact that I was saying that about everything. I would just, when I would feel that kind of like head shaking, like that's just not right, or that's just not fair, or it should have gone like this, or it should have done this, or it should have done that. Instead, I would catch myself and I would just kind of step back and I'm like, well, isn't that interesting? Instead of getting caught up in quickly naming it what it is in the moment, I would just sit there and say, wow, okay, I'm not seeing the perfection in this. But instead of labeling it wrong, I'm just going to say it is what it is, and I'm going to either, if it's something that's like really out there, that I cannot really get myself involved in, like there's some things that happen that we're just simply not going to know the reason why. We might not know it in our lifetime. It might take 10 years down the road, or could be something that involves another person, so I can't really see the good or bad or perfection in it. So there's some things that I'm just going to have to trust. For whatever reason, I just got to trust that that was perfect. You know, you take like a tragedy, take like 9/11. Finding the love and the beauty in something so tragic sometimes can be really, really tough. So since I don't have privy to all the ins and outs and all the little scenarios that happen around 9/11 and all the different ways that it's impacted people around the world, I'm just going to trust that it's perfect and it has its own beauty, and those that are experiencing it know it, and those who aren't, my heart goes out to them because that beauty still exists even though they're not experiencing it. So some of those big things I just kind of had to set on the shelf and say, okay, I'm just not going to label it right or wrong. It just is what it is. I'm going to put it over here because it doesn't really affect my day-to-day life. Other things, like my interactions with my husband, those things, they affect me every single day. So those things I can kind of sit with for a while, and I can kind of step out of, and I can look back in on the situation and kind of not necessarily like pick it apart, but just try to gain a different perspective. How could this be perfect? In what scenario would this situation be perfect? And then it would allow me to take that time in contemplation and analyzing the situation to come up with a more serving outcome. One that didn't weigh me down. One that would allow me to accept the situation or to accept my spouse for who he is. One that would let me accept situations. And all that this does really is bring peace to me. It just brings peace to me. So that situation is not going to change. So I can either carry it around like it's a negative, bad thing, woe is me, or I can step outside of it, find the perfection, find the peace in it, and then have that thing not have power over me anymore. So that's where I started finding a lot of power when I started dropping the right or wrong. And what I found too is that a lot of people really, 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 really want to be right. Really want to be right. And they're really upset whenever I won't just say, you're right. They will build their case. They will plead. They will show all the evidence. They will show all the examples A, B, and C. They will reference to other things. They will show me the general opinion agrees with them. And I will still say, I understand everything that's coming out of your mouth. I'm still not going to say that you're right. Because that's not for me to judge. Somebody else can walk up and say that it's wrong. So if things can change that easily, no wonder we have such a hard time getting along with one another. We're all carrying our own stories of how things should be, and then we're expecting other people to behave accordingly. The biggest problem with that way of operating through life is that the people that you expect to follow your rules never agreed to do things your way. They never said that they were going to compliment you every time that they saw you. They never said that they were going to tell you, I love you, before hanging up the phone every day. They never said that they were going to do the things that you prefer for them to do. You assumed that they would because you assumed that somebody who loves you would do that. Because to you, when you love somebody, that's what you do to them. So we're being very, very, very hypocritical, and then we're getting upset with the other person when they're getting upset with us whenever we feel like we weren't wrong. And when I started realizing that I had all these stories and all these regulations about what a husband should be like, and what a wife should be like, and what a dad should be like, and what a mom should be like, and what a sister should be like, and yes, a lot of these are kind of general opinions. Most people would agree that a mom should not hit their child. Most people would agree with that. That that's not love. I guarantee you take any mom that hits their kid, they will tell you how much they love their child, and that's why they do what they do. So we can either go around making everybody right or wrong in alignment with our preferences, or we can realize our right and wrong are just simply our preferences, and that everybody has their own preferences. And if I don't want to be held to what your preferences are without you telling me what you expect of me, why am I going to do that to you? And this is kind of radical. This is where we get into the radical love. Because then we have to take responsibility for ourselves, and we have to think before we do something to somebody, or treat somebody, or decide who's worthy of our love or who isn't. Because if you ask me, that's just a bunch of hooey to say I love you, but whenever you don't do what I want you to do, and I subliminally want you to do it, and I'm not going to tell you that I want you to do it, I'm just going to expect for you to do it, and whenever you don't do it, I'm going to not be nice to you for the rest of the day. I can't do that anymore. And what I find is that not being nice to somebody for the rest of the day, not only does it hurt that person if they choose to allow it to affect them, but definitely it's going to be hurting me, because I'm carrying this upset, angry, negative, resentful, sad feeling with me wherever I go. So really it's just causing more harm to myself. If I can quickly move past the initial reaction of, ooh, that stung, to, oh, you know what, maybe this is what he meant. Or better yet, if it's somebody who says that they love me, and I'm receiving something that I don't feel is love, I just decide, must have been a misfire. That wasn't for me. Even if they look straight at me and say, I am so mad that blah, and they look right at me, intending it to be me, I can choose to buy into that, believe that, or I can choose to get to what I know to be true. Since I don't know what's going through somebody's head, and I can only go on what comes out of their mouth and what actions they display for me. That's all I can really go on. I cannot read somebody else's mind. And in saying that, why would I ever expect somebody else to read my mind too? Which a lot of us do. We say to somebody, I'm not a mind reader, what, she think I can read her mind? But then we expect her to read our mind. We're very, very hypocritical people. I am very hypocritical when I started catching myself doing this stuff.